There we go. There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome. How's everyone doing? Happy Friday. Hello to the Lupineers, to the early people, to the early folks on the stream. We love to see it. And Bandita, as you can see, is not currently with us, so I will turn off the Bandit camera until she decides to join us later because she is a free spirit who loves being outdoors. So she's probably laying somewhere in the grass. Her lips are so dry. I also got bit by a mosquito on my face today. So not having the best luck today on this Friday, but besides that, doing well. Thank you for smashing the like button. We love it. Thank you. Honestly, YouTube is a mystery. So do the likes help? Maybe. Do they not help? Probably not. So if you want to like it, go ahead and like it. If you don't want to like it, don't worry about it. But it might be helpful, so why not? It will show up in your liked videos, which does anyone ever actually look through their liked videos? Probably not. But just in case, should probably know that. Mosquitoes, I don't like remember mosquitoes being a problem at all around here last year, but I think it's been warm enough for long enough to where like maybe last year they just like got torched by the late. I think we had snow here in like May, like last year. It was really wild. But yeah, hello Dale, and hello Twixie Shores, and hello Lexi, and hello Thai Hong, and hello Kalutch, and Christian, and everyone who is here joining us, and Ryan, hello. I don't know if I said hello to Dale, I think maybe I did, but just in case I didn't, I will say hello again. Hello Phil's Violet, hello Mark, hello Unicorn, hello Emma, hello Sarah, hello, welcome. Ooh, from Granada. Hello, welcome from up here in Portland to Nicaragua. I have heard occasionally from folks in the scene in South and Central America, but I don't really know a whole lot. I know there's like Mexico City definitely has some stuff. Brazil I've heard is a little difficult. I don't know about Nicaragua though, so very interesting. Welcome. It's very smoky outside. Okay, I learned yesterday that apparently everywhere else on the like map of North America is having issues with their weather, like really big thunderstorms and smoke, and I'm just here like la 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 la, 85 degrees, sunny, clear skies. I don't know what's going on, but don't worry, I will have my fair share of just smoky summer weather. There needs to be a fire in British Columbia or like in California at some point. It'll happen, and then it'll be smoky here too, and I can commiserate. But just for people that are new in the chat, first of all, thank you so much everyone who's already asking questions. Really quickly, I do hear my dog outside, so let me go get her. Oh, kicked over my water bottle. Okay, here we go. Hello, you know what time it is? You know what time it is? Yeah! Hi, baby. Are you ready to go? Hi. Oh, so sweet. Such a good girl. We're gonna snuggle on the couch after this. It'll be so much fun. Hey, come here. Say hello. Say hello. Ta-da. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Hi, sweet girl. All right, I'm gonna put you down in your little bed. But you're probably not gonna want to stay in because it is warm outside. But all right, I'm gonna get that set up real quick. Okay, so while I'm doing that, let's talk about what this whole stream is. So this is an interactive Q&A, as we normally like to do on our Friday evenings at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And we just hang out, and you guys ask questions, and I answer them, and we talk about them in the chat. We have a really wonderful little community here, so we have lots of people that come in and ask questions themselves, and then answer it in the chat, and go back and forth, and offer other alternative experiences and opinions, which is really great. And yeah, it's basically what we do. I would say the main ground rules you would need to know is that number one, oh, she's yawning, it's so cute. Look at that. Little yawny doggo. That's as much as I can zoom in, by the way. I get to experience this every day. It's wonderful. So main things that you need to know if you're new here and you haven't been before is I answer questions in the order they come in. So even if you're here very early, please do not spam the chat. Just let me get to it. I can't get to everything, but I will try. If you want to make sure that I do answer your question, you can use a Superchat or Streamlabs. Both of those are linked down below, and then it'll pop up on screen, and then you guys can see it right away. And then the other main thing to know besides that is this is an 18 plus only stream. That's one of the big main rules. And then the other big main thing to know is that I have an FAQ in the description box that goes over all of the other rules we have here as well. Just some, like, it's mostly pretty obvious stuff, but the main thing to know is don't spam the chats. Please be respectful, and, like, don't ask for medical advice because I won't answer that. If you want to know about, like, is my bruise from the scene infected? Should I go to a doctor? I'm not gonna be able to help you with that. But as long as we're within those ground rules is basically what we need to know. And yeah, we can just go ahead and get into it. Yes, I have thought often about if I get a second dog, should I name them Smokey? But that's probably not on the horizon. And frankly, I'll probably also just get an adult dog that already has a name. So I probably won't get too much of a say in it, but it is good to know. Okay, let's get into some questions because I definitely already saw some popping up in the chat earlier. So happy you're covering The Idol. I couldn't stop seeing how a lot of the scenes felt like they were supposed to be kink adjacent. Yes, so I haven't watched it yet, but I have seen a lot of YouTube coverage of it. I know Cat Black did a video about it like a day or two ago. I haven't seen that yet, but a lot of other creators have covered it, like really big creators, like Moist Critical talked about it, and who else talked about it that I watched? Who was like the big person I saw covering it? Oh, D'Angelo Wallace. I think he's probably the main big person that people have watched that has been talking about it, and I think all the videos I saw so far, like, it sounds like everyone's kind of in the same realm of opinion. It's not very controversial in terms of, like, people have wildly different takes about this, but I haven't seen a lot of people be able to, like, deftly navigate talking about the sex scenes and the kink elements, because definitely from what I've heard, having not watched it yet, a lot of the scenes appear to be like they're attempting to do like a 50 Shades 365 days-esque thing, and it's not really working because they're also trying to make a show about a toxic guy who supposedly also, like, oh, you're not supposed to like him, he's like a cult leader, he's like a bad guy. But then the show, but like that character is played by The Weeknd, the giant mainstream musical artist, and people already know him, and like it's also his show now, and so like he's sort of navigating like how to direct the show, and so he's supposed to be a bad guy, but then the show isn't really like communicating that with the framing of everything happening. So it's a big old mess, and there's a lot in there that the last episode, because it's only 5 episodes for first season. I argue you can't call it 5 episodes. You're not allowed to call it a TV series. That's a mini series at that point, because 5 episodes is nothing. Like, I feel at least 8 episodes is the minimum for a full season of TV. Like 5, what is that? That's like a 7th season. They split into 2 parts because it took them 3 years to make it type situation. Like, that's getting into the real funky last act of a TV series that's being made very slowly because all the actors got really big now and have other obligations and can't like all film simultaneously very consistently. But yeah, so there's that to think about, but it's very interesting, like how on the one hand I feel like they are trying to, like, I'm like putting my thinking hat on here, The Idol, and for maybe people who don't know what this is a very I feel like it's popular to critique. It was very hyped up in the lead up to the release of this show coming out. And people were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the next big thing, the big next, summer streaming deal. And now that it's come out, outside of some articles online that are written by, is my voice is like really peaking. Oh, let me fix that. Is that better? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not. A lot of British shows are 6 episodes. Okay, I think, yeah, but they don't even they call it a series, though. So it's like, you get away with it because you don't call it a season, you call it a series. Yeah, British series do tend to be shorter. Like, the IT crowd, I think, is like 6 or 7 episodes a season for each series. 5 episodes is we're not sure we actually want this show deal. I think there was a lot of, on the back end of the show, there was a lot of issues with figuring out, okay, who's going to actually be making the show, who's going to be in it, what direction we're going in. There was a lot of churn and upheaval before they got to being even close to releasing anything. And so I think that messed with probably the vision they actually wanted. And so because it's so short, then they can't really tell like a very detailed, nuanced story where like the characters slowly build, or at least they don't think that. And so they end up just like ramming a bunch of stuff into like every episode where it's like, shock value, look at this. This is for the teaser for next time. This is gonna be what everyone talks about on social media. Like they're trying to game the system, and they thought they did that, but then actually ended up backfiring because all of it ends up being very cringy. And I didn't really think anything about it, but I've heard that there's a scene that involves spanking with a hairbrush that is like let's help you heal from your childhood trauma from your mom because she beat you. And now a sex pest that's also your manager now or something, is now going to also do that to you because you need to be motivated properly. And like, yes, there are kink relationships where consensually you explore these themes and work through them. Not in the way they're doing it. And I wanted to dissect why that's not good representation, because I think in the same way that a lot of media that shows sort of like kinky-esque things, if you're like a newer kinky person or like coming into that part of your way of living, right? It could be your sexuality if you're a sexual person, or it could not be if you're not. But whatever that is for you, whatever role that plays in your life, I think it's like if you watch stuff like that and you go, oh, that kind of makes me like feel a certain way. Actually, I think I like that. It's very easy to like get steered towards the wrong path by media representations like this, because you don't have any other form of representation. You just have what's being shown. And if you are shown things that are framed as being like sensual and necessary and helpful and like causes character growth by a show, but then if you actually do that in reality, like that's actually going to be really damaging for you, that's not good. You don't want that. So I want to talk about sort of like how they could, like what they're doing, why it's bad, how they could have done it better, and also talking about how like kink people would actually do this sort of thing and like how to do it in a healthier way, in case you are somebody who watches that show and like connects with it or relates to it. Because I think one of the issues to having a show that is so widely condemned like this one is, where everyone is saying it's trash, it's awful, it's the worst show currently on television, it's the worst scenes ever put to screen, it's like The Room but with The Weeknd in it, like it's really bad. And so I think people get self-conscious if they relate to certain things in media like that, and they go, well, but I kind of like that, but I kind of want to do that. Kind of seems hot to me, actually. What do I do with that feeling? And then it causes people to feel shame and to repress certain feelings, because they go, well, clearly this is awful that I even think about doing this, because look at how everyone else is reacting to me wanting to do this. And I want to sort of have that like middle ground of like, it's not that this is inherently cringy itself to want to do, in like it's always cringy to want this thing or to find that appealing or to want to play with that idea. It's the execution of it in terms of how it works as part of this larger narrative in this film or in this movie or TV show or whatever it is. And that it's okay to like certain things. Like I think the same thing happens with like, let's be honest, like 50 Shades of Grey, right? Like a lot of people like the idea of having an experienced dominant coming along and like plucking you from obscurity, or having that like very deep, sudden, like emotional connection to somebody, or like having access to all of these toys, or the kneeling, or like they find something about it appealing and then they're embarrassed to point to that as the start of their exploration, or to be honest with their partners about wanting to recreate certain things from that. Or, and I think what really happens because of that is because, like, the overwhelming mainstream opinion about that, I think fairly, to be clear, is that that stuff is very bad. But you only just hear, it's awful, it's bad, it's cringy, LOL, Twilight moms, LOL, middle-aged women, midlife crisis, it's silly they like this, they're deranged, they're delusional, la la la. Like, it's so focused on, like, hating perimenopausal women for, like, having a sex life and reading erotica and, like, finding things appealing sexually. And it's like, you realize there's, like, lots of things that men really find sexually appealing that are even cringier than this is. And, like, if you, like, also are much more likely to be labeled as being abusive or bad, but we don't really have big public conversations about that in the way we do with, like, women's focused media. But anyways, the point is to say is that, yes, I think people, like, there are bad representations that you can find, like, little nuggets in that are, like, abstracted from this exact thing you're engaging with, and not in the media itself, like, in the context of it, but, like, kind of sucked out from that, polished, washed off, separated away. You go, I think I actually want to try that, or I like something about that. And I just don't want people to feel embarrassed or ashamed that they can find things appealing about media that is otherwise, like, cringy and bad, Like, I don't know. I just don't want to do that because I feel like there's not a lot. We don't have, like, a lot of better options to steer people towards anyways. It's like Secretary and Love and Leashes, and both of those have their own issues. Like with Secretary, there's an overriding theme of self-harm and the idea that you can cure somebody's self-harm tendencies if you just dom them enough and you have that deep enough connection. And that's not accurate or, like, healthy either, but, like, somehow, because it gets favorably compared to 50 Shades of Grey so often, like, people, I almost feel like they kind of don't want to speak badly about Secretary because it's so esteemed and, like, held in this very high regard, where people don't want to say that they don't like it or find elements of it, like, not in alignment with modern understandings and sensibilities for what is appropriate to show in a movie. But yeah, it's all controversial, I suppose. I was talking to a friend today, and we got into talking about Twilight, and the subject turned to 50 Shades. Oh no, hopefully not too cringy speaking to that. But yeah, so I'm planning to cover it. The last episode of The Idol comes out on the 2nd. So this weekend, I probably won't watch the first episodes. I think it's the 3rd and the 4th episode have the other, like, potentially kinky elements in them. I need to see what it's on, because I might be able to watch it in 2x speed, so I might actually watch the other ones too, but I don't feel like I need to, because it kind of feels like there's no actual plot, and so will I really be missing anything if I skip 2 episodes? Probably not, but it's kind of a last minute decision for me to decide to watch that, so maybe not. Exactly, there's still somewhat of a taboo against older women being sexual. Yeah, I think that that's a big factor, is like women getting shamed for having a sexuality. Like, I think it's pretty normal for people because, like, oh, you okay, little girl? Oh, we're sneezing. Okay. Doggo sneezing. And she also moved, of course, because that is what she does. Always move. Here we go. Boop. Okay. So yeah, I just think that there's, like, this shame around women having a sexuality and, like, finding things appealing, which I find very interesting, because I think we're very willing, for example, with, like, porn and with hentai and things, like, hentai is a form of porn, but you know what I mean, like visual live action porn or hentai or anything like that that is primarily catered to a male audience. I think we're much more readily able to, as, like, on the whole, as a society, if you're not somebody that's, like, just, unless you believe porn is the devil and watching it is cheating and, like, self-mutilation and whatever, like, really, really bad stuff. Like, if you're just, like, an average person, for the most part, you go, oh, it's just porn, it's a fantasy, it's not real, la la la. And so you kind of get carte blanche to, like, engage in whatever and watch whatever, and people aren't, like, generally too judgmental because they understand that it's just fantasy content. But then with women, it's like, oh, you're 45 and you have a 13-year-old daughter, and you like 50 Shades of Grey? That's gross. That's disgusting. How dare you? That's women like that shouldn't be. It's like, what? Like, I hate to tell you, women like to do things sometimes with men, without men, on their own. It's all a thing. And it just goes back to, like, I think the social desire for, like, control over women's sexuality, because if there's not control over it, then that's dangerous and not really a good thing for social control. What was your first exposure to BDSM in media? I loved the movie 9 to 5 when I was a kid and recently rewatched it, and I was reminded of them keeping their boss chained up with a dog collar. What was my first exposure to BDSM in media? Because I guess there's sort of like consciously something that is BDSM, like in media, like that's what it is. It was probably when 50 Shades was getting really big when I was in college. Like, that would have been my junior year, probably, somewhere around there. Because I didn't watch, like, a lot of other, like, I didn't really grow up watching movies and stuff, so I didn't, like, have a lot of that, like, to have as a reference point for anything. So I didn't get a lot from that home. Like, but then there's sort of, like, kink adjacent stuff, you know? There's, like, the joke in a TV show about you know, the husband being super compliant and submissive, or like something that's like kinky about a sex scene but isn't like BDSM fully either. I mean, honestly, I feel like I was a lot older when I was exposed to this stuff. I feel like my first exposure to like kink in media was probably, and I've mentioned this maybe before, is Irene Adler in the BBC Sherlock series. Because in that version of it, she's a pro-dom, and she has a female servant that, like, is help taking care of the house and is, like, a PA. And, like, she fucking, like, I always remember this scene where, like, they show up, and then, like, she's passed out, and then she's like, don't worry, she likes being like that. And then just, like, carts her off somewhere else. And it's like, you know what? Same. I get it. Vibe. I understand. Like, I think that combined with maybe, like, I don't know, like, there was probably, like, YouTube videos and stuff that had jokes about it that I don't remember, but that's, like, the main thing I remember, where it was like, oh, this is, like, a thing that people do. Because I grew up for a long time just thinking it was, like, a fantasy that people had. Like, that was my default assumption until I was, like, an adult, was kinky stuff is a thing that you fantasize about, but no one actually really does it. No, this isn't a real life thing where you do it. Like, you talk about it, and then you don't ever act on it, because that would no one does that, because it'd be too wild. And then I found out later that people do actually do it. I thought that was entertaining. The older women shouldn't have a sex drive trope was a huge part of me being a lesbian separatist in my early 20s. Oh dear. I mean, yeah, if you don't want women to be lesbian separatists, maybe don't do that. Then I learned that trans inclusive in the world meant AFAB only. Oh, that's, yeah. But feminism, mainstream feminism has some issues. I will say that. I think mine was Madonna's Express Yourself video. Not that I noticed it at the time. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot, like, music videos, definitely, for sure. Even just, like, lyrics, maybe lyrics to music. Like, if we're counting that, too, there's definitely a lot of that in, like, pop music. And even, like, fucking, people are like, oh, the music these days, the kid lyrics is so raunchy. You can't have the kids listen to this. And it's like, every rock and roll song from the 80s is about fucking women and groupies. Like, it's being on the road, having my guitar, and having sex with women. That's they don't say that, right? They say, like, give me your sweet lovin'. But giving me your sweet lovin' means your body. Like, not that I knew that as a kid, but, you know, you realize, you go, oh, that's a really horny song. Oh, they're all really horny. Oh, that explains some things. Yeah, my husband knew it was a thing that people did for fun, but he didn't know that 24/7 existed. Yeah, and I think it was also sort of like, okay, like, I think that people, like, fooled around. Like, they did kind of, like, little things, but I didn't think they'd, like, 24/7 or, like, because I think my fantasies were like, and I'm not going to talk about this in detail, so please don't ask, but I think a lot of my like early kink related fantasies or like ideations I had, because I feel like fantasy is the wrong word for it, because I didn't like touch myself or anything, like that was years away, but like the ideations I had in my head about it of like, ooh, this sounds like fun and I wish I could have a relationship like this, or this would be fun to explore in some way, like it was very fantastical. Like it wasn't stuff that like you could do in real life. So I just thought that it was always all like that. It was always all like too fantastical to really exist on any level. And then I found out that you could really do it for real. And then that changed my whole life. I'm a Slave for You by Britney Spears. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a big one. Mm-hmm. Definitely lots of songs for sure. Okay. Well, with all that being said, maybe let's get into some other questions. Let's get into that. We'll talk about probably 50 Shades in media stuff as we go, I'm quite sure. I saw something online in a quick moment of silence for the closure of regrets. Oh, are they closing again? Oh, that's so sad. I remember like it was pre-pandemic or like around the start of the pandemic. I know Wicked Grounds. I mean, that's so crazy. They've been doing online classes like all the time. Like they've been doing online classes, in-person classes like for a long time. I know they were reformatting like how they were doing stuff, but they were doing in-person things. They were definitely like, I know they have to make money doing online classes because they do them constantly. But yeah, no, it says Wicked Grounds has closed their physical location. This is not the end, just a moment of transition. We will continue offering our events and educational resources online and at other community venues. Thank you for your continued support. Oh, that's so sad. So for people who don't know what Wicked Grounds is, Wicked Grounds is slash was a like coffee place in, I want to say it's the Somo district of San Francisco, right near Folsom Street, like right by the Mr. S Leather store. And they like, it was a place you could go and you could hang out and you could like, it was an openly kink friendly space. Like it was ran by kinky people, and so you could go there and like wear a collar or kneel or be used as a footstool or be fed by, by hand by your partner underneath the table. Like you could do stuff openly kinky that wasn't like scenes, but like was behavior that you could not do in a regular restaurant. And it was a really nice little meetup space. And over the pandemic, they were at risk of closing down, and they had a really big fundraiser. And I don't want to say it was during the pandemic because I'm forgetting if it was around that time period. I think it was like either right before or right after the pandemic started. And they ended up raising enough money to be able to stay open. And I thought that they had maybe a more sustainable funding model because they did really move into like organizing online classes, which are great, by the way. You just look Wicked Grounds. They're on, if you just Google Wicked Grounds, it should pop up. But Wicked Grounds, FetLife, Google, Instagram, Facebook, all those places, they're on there. And they use a website called Forbidden Tickets to sell events, and they had classes with like everyone, right? They had Lee Harrington, they had Midori, they had like all kinds of people, all different like really really well-known like educators and authors and people that were sort of local and not really as well known. And it's sad that they are closing because that was a really cool space. I got to go a couple times when I visited San Francisco, and they had great food. It was a great, like, it wasn't even like, oh, the food was bad, but the space was cool. Like, no, they had good food. They had milkshakes, they had lattes. Like, it was, they even had like sort of a small retail area for kink equipment and books and things. It was it's a really nice combination. But San Francisco is very, very expensive, even in the more industrial, less desirable areas of SF. It's not a surprise to me that they would have like cash flow problems and have trouble being able to operate. And I hope they continue to do more stuff. So that's sad, but I'm glad they're continuing in any capacity. And I can't, there's nowhere else I know that's like Wicked Grounds. I don't know anywhere that has that environment. And like, fuck, I don't know. Do they have t-shirts? Can I at least buy a t-shirt before they fully close? Like, dang. That's sad. But thank you for the news. I'm glad to know because I think it's worth it to give him a shout out. And I'm not doing crazy numbers on here. I'm not streaming to 1,000 people, so I can't really impact anything or change anything. But this is what I think about sometimes. Like if I was a streamer, like if I was the kind of streamer where like I did this every day, or like a YouTuber even, where I was getting millions of views a video and I would stream and get like 30K concurrents and I was able to live successfully and not have to worry about money anymore. Like what would I spend my money on after that? And like definitely getting to donate to these community resources and fundraisers so places like this don't have to close would be definitely top of my list because it's so hard. It's so hard to run any kind of community space, but especially a standalone space where it's not like a mixed use situation where it's like, oh, it's a photography studio during the day and then in the evening it's a BDSM venue or it's a bar and also a thing. Because I think when you're mixing stuff, it just like there tends to be problems like just in terms of like what types of people it attracts or how safe the environment is, and having something that's dedicated for just kink stuff is very difficult. And I mean, they made a good run of it for sure. I think the Wet Spot in Seattle, which eventually ended up becoming the CSPC and then Paneros and other affiliated organizations before and after, was a similar venue, but it also ended up having problems because it turns out kind of hard to run stuff like that. Just openly kinky venues. I think especially with like the modern political climate that we're currently dealing with, I imagine that's even like more difficult. Mm-hmm. Oh, when you're talking about 50 Shades of Grey, I got kind of heated at the depiction of BDSM and she was confused. So I kind of revealed what my relationship is, and she was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Well, I am glad that you talking about that went well. Absolutely. Very monogamous and married. I mean, yeah, sometimes you just don't explore outside of that. Yeah. I need to watch some more videos. I feel like I'm so behind in the general information playlist. Does anyone have any recommendations for rope play? Like for education for rope play, I don't have very many videos on that on my channel just because I feel like it's a really hard subject to communicate about on YouTube. And the one place I would recommend if you want tutorials that's on YouTube is, I feel like they changed their channel name recently. Let me double check. Because they were doing, they have like 2 channels now actually. I think they have like a behind kink where it's like an interview show. Okay, YouTube's like fucking up right now. I went to my subscription feed and it's just blank. YouTube, get your stuff together. Oh my god. I literally try to go to my subscription feed and I can't search anything. It's just blank. Oh my god. Okay. I have to search for this and hopefully it'll pop up. There's Rory's Brain Works, who they don't really make YouTube videos much anymore. I think they maybe are still on TikTok. I haven't really kept up with them. But that can be a fun channel to look up. I feel like he has a really fun personality and is like just a good, just good vibes, good vibes. Shibari Study is not really on YouTube. There's a couple, they have some like free videos on YouTube, but if you're willing to pay for rope education, they are by far and away the best. Like if you just don't have access to in-person classes, which is always what I'd recommend, by the way. My order of recommendations for rope education is this. Like worst but still tenable is like online visual demonstration with like pictures and text. Then it's online videos that are just like recorded one way. Then it would be like live stream educational classes where you have a back and forth with the educator like in real time. And then the best of the best is getting to go to in-person classes. But I know not everywhere has the opportunity to go to events like that, or they're very expensive, or like in my situation, the one person I know that teaches rope in Portland that's like a standalone educator actually moved down here recently, like around the same time I did, I think even maybe before me, from Seattle, does not necessarily have a great reputation, and so I don't feel comfortable going to classes with that individual. But well, no, that's not true. There's other, just because I'm in Portland, I feel like I need to be clear about this in case anyone else is like looking for resources. That's one person I'm thinking of. There are other organizations that are like groups that I think are better for educating people. I haven't attended them, so I can't speak to how good they are or not, but there's a solo individual who teaches that I don't think has a very good reputation from what I knew about them from when they were in Seattle. So I have not attended any events that they have been hosting. And I can't talk about who it is because defamation and blah, blah, blah. So keep that in mind. Okay, where is this channel? I cannot find them. I just look for, like, I'm gonna find this because Bondage Tuition. That's what it is. Thank you. So Bondage Tuition, they also have really good videos. I think they have some more beginner videos, but they have a lot of stuff that's like pattern ties, I guess is what I would call them. And then also like some stuff about education and negotiation and like actually doing like full-on sequences and like how to play with stuff. I think they make pretty good videos, and I'd also recommend their channel if you want to check that out. And yeah, that's what I'd maybe go for is, and I have like in the FAQ in the description box, I have links to like my recommendations for stuff like this, and there's lots of resources online. Like literally when I put together a list of websites, YouTubers, blogs, educators, like FetLife groups, all of that, like there's somewhere between dozens and hundreds of resources. Like there's a lot when you put it all together, depending on how your brain works the best. But again, if you have to pick one, my favorite one that is like a paid thing that I think makes really, really good stuff that you can get a free trial for is Shibari Study. I think they make really, really good stuff. Like to the point where I'm like, one of the few people that if I took sponsorships, I would be willing to be sponsored by would be Shibari Study, because I think their stuff is just so good. Not that they need my endorsement, but you know, if they decided they needed it, I would be more than happy to give it, because I've been following Shibari Study since like they very first made like the first 2 or 3 videos, and they were selling stuff directly from like a Vimeo homepage, and they've grown so much, and they just have like it's only gotten better. Only gotten better for sure. So that's my answer to that question. Hopefully that is thorough enough for you. Question. For body ties / a harness, like for example, a simple pentagram harness, how much rope would a person typically need? Like would a 10-foot rope be good enough, or do you need the ones that are 3 foot? If you're not used to tying rope, 30 feet seems like a lot. Keep in mind, when you have 30 feet of rope, if you are tying stuff in the style of most bondage rope, which is the rope doubled over, your 10 feet is really 5 feet. Your 30 foot is really 15 feet, or your 8 meters is really 4 meters, because you're having it basically the entire time you're tying it. Most harnesses, it really depends on the size of the person that you're tying and like how wide their rib cage is. And like for me, definitely a harness I could do in either 8 meters or 30 foot and like have room left over. Other people that have a larger rib cage or a bigger chest, or depending on what else is part of the tie and how anatomy can affect the amount of rope you might need a little bit more than that. There are, like, for example, there are people who they will learn how to tie a harness they do all the time, and they will get a custom length of rope cut designed just for use in that harness to make sure it's exactly the right amount of rope. But for general purpose, if you're looking for an amount of rope to buy, and you're just interested in, like, you just only want to do a chest harness or a hip harness, I would say having a 30 foot and like a 15 foot would probably be a good place to start. But if you want to start connecting things together or doing more complicated stuff, like you're getting into like takatakotes and things like that, you're going to want to have 2-3 plus lengths of rope. And if you get into wanting to put people in the air, they need lots and lots of rope. But I would say, and especially because you want stuff in case something gets like if you're playing around and you don't want to like fiddle with like the knots or whatever, you want to just be able to throw something in the toy bag again and get out a fresh new, like, you know, clean piece of rope. Having extras is also a good idea, right? Like, you don't ever, like, no one's ever like, I have one paddle, it's the only paddle I need. Like, no, everyone wants to have multiple paddles because, ooh, this one's this way and this, you know, this is good for this, and I like the way this one feels. Like, you want to have multiple options. And different harnesses are great, different amounts of rope. But yeah, 10 feet, you would not have a lot to work with. That, like, you could maybe do a very simple harness with that, but that's not going to be enough. You're going to want to have at least 30 feet or 8 meters. But usually having a long length and a short length, which is typically 30 foot and 15 foot, or 8 meters, and then I think 4 or 5 meters. I don't know if they do. I think the short length is 4 or 5 meters. I'd have to check. I don't like generally get rope in like meter length, so I'm not familiar with that. But definitely you want options for rope length, and it's more than you think that you need. But it's been a long time since I've done like the simple, like the classic pentagram harness style, so I don't know what that usually is, but pretty much all harnesses are going to be at least 30 feet. Oh, I missed this part. For example, someone with your same or similar stature. Yeah, 30 feet at least. And you're going to have, like, to be clear, you will have rope left over. You will have stuff trailing off at the end. But I wouldn't start getting into, like, trying to get random lengths of rope to be exact with. Because you're like, unless you're going to be tying that one thing a lot and you do want exactly 23 feet. Like, if you start getting into, well, I need to have a 20 foot and a 15 foot and a 10 foot and a 5 foot and a 30 foot and a 35 foot. Like, it ends up, like, being very hard to tell the difference between which one you're grabbing unless you've marked them specifically. And, like, learning how to, like, kill rope or incorporate extra rope into a tie is also a skill worth learning. So, and also, like, different bodies are going to need different lengths anyways. So, like, unless you're only ever tying one person or yourself, it's not really worth it, but yeah. It's more like 15 meters and 7 meters based on 30 and 15. Oh, that can't be right. That's not how math works. That's not how. Yeah, because it's 8 meters because it's 20, like, 8 meters is, like, from, like, Japanese, like, shibari rope. Like, I know it's not exactly. Oh, fucking. What? Oh. Camera. Okay. It's this time of year again. Alright. Sorry, my camera overheated. I know the camera overheated, baby. Hi, sweet girl. Hi, sweetie girl. So sweet. Sorry, I'm just gonna let it cool down for a minute and then we'll get back into it, but my fan was turned off by accident. I forgot that I turned it off because it was too cold in here earlier today. So I turned off my fan, and that was a mistake. Yeah, 50 feet would be way too long. That would be crazy long. All right, let's see if this helps at all. All right, I think I apologize if you can hear the fan. I don't know how good this microphone is at isolating noise, but hopefully it's not too bothersome. I don't think you guys should hear it. I mean, I don't think you guys do hear, it's probably a very low hum in the background, but let me know if you can still hear it for some reason. So yeah, like, it's honestly consider just making paddles. If you have to make it, you narrow down what you need and what you want pretty quickly. Oh, that's very true, especially if you have the skill and the space to be able to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I disappeared for a second. No, 30 feet and 15 are standard. And I think most people have a kit with either 8 and 7 meter or 8 and 6 meter length of ropes. But again, I don't tie meters, so I'm not as familiar with that. But that's sort of what's standard for most tying purposes. Now, if you're tying with like a rope, if you're tying like Western style where the rope is not doubled over and you're doing different things, and the rope length's going to be different, and then you might be getting into longer lengths, but I don't really, like, there's not a style guide for that in the way that there is for shibari, where it's like you have to have this rope and this length and this kind. Like, people just go out and get some fucking Home Depot shit and they go, all right, let's go. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, 1.5 meters is about 5 feet. 3 meters is about 10 feet. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was not confused about that. I feel like I understood how much a meter was. I'm more confused about, like, I don't know if people make kits that are 6 or 7 meters as the second length, but it's good to know, so thank you. I knew someone in college that could only fall asleep with a fan on them. multiple people actually, now that I think about it, multiple people I knew in college, they had to have a tiny little like desk fan blowing on their face the whole night when they were going to sleep. And I'm like, it's December. What do you... Could not be me. Do not understand. I'm surprised that Wicked Grounds didn't file for some sort of historic landmark status, as it seems like it's been around for a while. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think that's what historic landmarks are for, and I don't think that necessarily preserves businesses, but I don't know anything about that. It's not really my thing. I definitely hear it, but it's not really all that distracting. I can probably turn it down a level or two in just a minute. I just want to make sure it's not gonna, like, the camera won't overheat again because I turned it back on pretty quickly. Oh, I didn't even see the one-on-one playlist, but going through the general playlist and was looking for at age play stuff. Yeah, I mean, I do have a playlist that is for age play and pet play stuff. If you want to know about that in particular, there is also a playlist just for that too. I know that age play for me is nowhere near little, since I just want a daddy-son dynamic. Oh, interesting. Like age play but not being a little. Okay. I mean, that's good that you know that about yourself. Pretty comfortable saying that's my limit with age play. I mean, hey, it's good to know yourself. Definitely. Oh, okay. Good questions. Finally made one. Hello. What do you think are good fictional depictions of kink that are, one, not straight, and two, really sweet, trying to heal some bad associations? Okay. Let me actually turn down my thing because it's distracting me now. Okay. Sort of like I think it's one level quieter than what it was, so hopefully that'll help out. The one thing that comes to my head, and I don't know if you would call this really sweet, but Sunstone is the main thing that comes up because it's about a lesbian couple. I don't know if they're lesbian exactly, but it's two women, so they're in a women loving women type situation. Tiny fan on face feels like foreshadowing for needing a CPAP machine. Wait, is there a correlation with that? Is that a thing? But yeah, to be fair, the person I can think of, I think they were like 4 Swifties that all shared a dorm room together on my dorm floor, and one of them was very tall. Like she was 6'6" or something. She was very, very tall. And I don't remember if it was her or one of the other girls that had the fan blowing on her, but being really tall, I think, is supposed to put you at risk for sleep apnea. So anyways, that's a riveting adult conversation we could be having. But yeah, so media representation, Sunstone definitely comes to mind. Again, not really like super sweet, but like... This is the problem, is there's not like enough media to be like, oh, we have so many diverse choices. Like, there's not really a lot of diverse choices. Like, this is what you get. Hope you like it. The other one is Duke of Burgundy. And that one has a weird ending. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you could say it's properly avant-garde, but it's avant-garde flavored. It has a weird ending. But I think the premise of it is very interesting, and there's a character that looks like Lady Gaga in it who builds kink furniture, and it's like all women, and it's all women all the time. But again, the ending's sort of strange. But I think it's overall like sort of a sweet, interesting thing to explore. There's a little bit of like weirdness about the dynamic though, that depending on what you're going through might be uncomfortable. So like Sunstone would be the main thing. But if other people have like other media things to recommend, for like queer relationships in kink, I would love to know, because I'm always wanting to have more resources for that, and there's just not a lot out there that's like very mainstream. And I don't really like read fan fiction or anything, so if anything regarding like fan fiction or erotica has happened, I don't know what it is. So you're gonna have to tell me. But I think it's good that you want to heal some bad associations, and I hope that ends up helping you out a little bit. And I know, I don't know where Duke of Burgundy, I don't know where that's currently at, but I think Love Unleashes, no, I didn't recommend Love Unleashes. Love Unleashes, though, is a good one. It is very sweet. If you want sweet, it does involve a straight couple, but the woman is the dominant one. Love Unleashes is a very sweet movie. And then Duke of Burgundy, I want to say, when did I watch that? What was it on? I want to say that one was maybe Amazon Prime. And then Sunstone is a comic book, so you like there's lots of websites you can download it from, or you can go and like buy physical copies if you want that too. But good questions so far. I have so many questions, but I need to be selective because I feel like there are some videos which will answer my questions. Whether the 101 guide put aside for later. I mean, hey, like ask away. If I think there's a video that you should watch that'll answer the question exactly, I will let you know what it is, but don't feel shy about asking. I promise I will not bite your head off. I promise. As long as you don't spam the chat. That's the one thing that makes me annoyed is like people that put the same question like 50 times in the chat. Like, please don't do that. Yeah, it's my little pupperino. It's Bandita. Her name's I have to say it very quietly. Her name is Bandit. But I can't say her full name like loudly because then she will awaken, and she'll be like she's so good at recall. I have to be very careful to not say her actual name too much because she gets very excited when I say it. She is my guardian angel. She is my guardian angel on this earth. Oh, okay. I thought my camera blanked out again for a second, but that was just that was the replay playing in the background. Looking for another question here. I got booted to the end of the chat, so I had to scroll back up. So many questions, lots of fires happening. It's my dog. It is my dog. I haven't caught a stream live in months. I'm so tired, but so excited to hang out and see Bandit. Well, I am glad you could make it. Thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit on this Friday, and get rested. I've been feeling a little bit more tired recently. I feel like my energy level was like really good for a while there where I wasn't getting sleepy at all during the middle of the day, and I messed up my sleep schedule a little bit working on some stuff for the past week, so I haven't been getting as much sleep as I need, and I've been getting tired in the evenings too, so I'm with you there. Yeah, please don't be weird towards me. That's usually a good rule of thumb. Don't be weird towards me. When was the last time you attended a play party? Are you still not peopling? I'm not really going to events that much. I am still going to things occasionally. I found some really good spaces here in Portland that I like that are more like femme focused and female dominant focused, which I enjoy. But they haven't been like, they decided to take a break for some reason. I didn't actually see on their website what they said about that. But they decided to take like a summer break or something on their website. And like, I think they're focusing on like more building up some other stuff right now. So they're not really having events as much in the moment. Yeah, the only thing they have coming up is at the end of July. So now they only have like one event like every month, every other month. But I really like that space. I went to it a couple times. It was great. I'm mostly focusing on going to bigger events right now, like going to conferences and like saving up my like energy for that. For going to in-person events. I just haven't like, I still like, if I go up to Seattle, I'll go to events there. But I haven't really found like a consistent space in Portland that I feel like safe and comfortable at. Cause a lot of the spaces here in Portland that are advertised as like being for like kinky folk and like hosting BDSM parties are really swingers events, and they have lots of drinking at them and a bar, and like I feel comfortable if I go with somebody having like a drink and like just hanging out and watching people and like dancing and doing that. I just don't like, I haven't found a space where I'm like, this is my right vibe, because most of the like, some of the venues don't really have good reputations, or they're swingers venues, and like it's just like not something I'm like I just don't really like peopling that much. And so I've been like focusing on my like individual personal relationships and putting energy into like building those up more so than like just going out to parties. And I think that that's been like serving me better in this season of life. If anyone else knows anything about Fundy Snark, y'all know about the seasons of life. But yeah, in my current season of life, I just haven't been going out to parties as much. But I've been going out to events occasionally, and like that's been fun. But I just like, they're just not the same. Like that, like regardless of where I've been going, Portland, Seattle, no matter where it is, big conferences I found have a very similar vibe to what they were before, and they've been amazing. But the other events, like the smaller parties, like they're different, and I just don't like them as much. Like, I don't know, like it's just different. And I bet that space in Portland could get toasty if it gets too warm. So I get that. Yeah, they're just like, it's too many people. Like, it's a small space. And, like, I don't know. There's a lot with, like, how Portland venues are organized. I don't, like, typically really, and, like, I don't want to get sick. And, like, they just have lots of people, lots of drinking. And it's very densely packed. And, like, even this, like, I'm not going to talk specifics about, like, individual spaces too much, but, like, most of them are on the smaller side, not a lot of room for play. I would definitely go to them for, like, private educational events. Like, if it was, like, a rope tying class or something like that, I would go to those. I just haven't really been, like, focusing on that too much right now, frankly, because I am in a deep hole of work I need to get done with because having COVID last year and moving really, really messed me up. And I've been, like, constantly trying to dig myself out of that hole of, like, not really being able to work or do anything for, like, 2 months last year. And I'm still, like, fucking playing catch up and it's driving me nuts. But I'm trying my best to work through that. And then hopefully, completely, I know this is, like, not related to kink at all. Really, this is just, like, adult life conversation. There is a really good app I've been using called Sunsuma for the last, like, 4 days to, like, help me organize my day. And it is, like, a calendar app with a task functionality that you can sync with, like, any app you want, right? Like Slack, Trello, freaking Jira. If you guys know what Jira is, if you work in that industry, it's on there as well. It's a really good way of organizing your day, like what your obligations are. And I've really been enjoying it. It's been helping me, like, hopefully help me get out of the giant pit of to-do list that I currently am suffering with. And then I think once I get through that, I don't feel as much pressure to, like, get through everything. I think if I just, like, knuckle down for, like, 2-3 months, I can get through everything I need to get through and, like, be able to have a little bit more of, like, a normal work-life balance. But yeah, that is me. I know you don't talk a lot about long distance relationship issues, but who do you recommend I listen to, or books? So the one couple I know of that's, like, an educational couple that has had a history of long distance relationships is somebody I interviewed. It's the Loving BDSM podcast. I've talked to them last year, and they did last year, 2022. I talked to them last year, and they did a really good job of explaining what that was, and they definitely have a lot of episodes of their podcast, which also has a YouTube version, so you can listen to the podcast or the YouTube version for the newer episodes where they talk about being long distance and advice for that and, like, how that worked for them. But as far as, like, books and educational stuff, there's not, like, a guide to long distance BDSM I can recommend, but I do know that they've talked about it before. But if anyone else is anyone that, like, has good videos or resources on long distance, like, relationships, or, like, I'm assuming the kink relationship stuff, because if you just want to know long distance relationships, there's a lot of resources for that. Kinky long distance with, like, a power exchange component, very specific, not too much about that out there. Yes, and we do have a 3 strikes you're out rule. Just to clarify, if you, like, how the system works for people is, like, one, if you have a very egregious, like, violation of my guidelines or YouTube guidelines, you will just be blocked. Like, if you start, like, I don't know, trying to dox somebody or something, it's a one-time thing. You just get kicked out. But if you are, like, not listening to the rules or, like, spamming the chat, you get warnings from the mods, you get timed out, and if you have to be timed out more than twice, then you get booted. So just, you know, listen to the mods, listen to me, read the rules, and all will be well. All will be well. Hey Evie, I think you answered a question where someone had a kink for racism, and you were saying you didn't want to kink shame, but is there ever a time where it's okay to kink shame? Was it okay, I don't know if it was a kink for racism. I'm trying to... Was that the person who had a partner that was into this? Or am I mixing up 2 different stories? Because I don't remember that exact thing happening. I will say when it comes to race play as a general concept, I think what I was trying to speak to with that is saying that, like, I don't want to kink shame the concept of engaging in, like, race play or certain edge play types of role play involving like race or ethnicity or religion, because I know a lot of people that get a lot of benefit out of playing with those things that are those ethnicities or races, and that's a very healing experience for them. And I don't want to like tell people that that's just like always bad and to never do it and it's always wrong, because like that's like it's not really my place to like tell a black woman she can't do this race play thing, or to tell a Jewish person to not do Nazi role play. Like I can't, like that's not like, I feel like I can't, I don't want to be like the kink police on that. So I just sort of go, hey, you know what, be mindful. Like my opinion is like really like, I think there's a way to engage in that in a way that's healthy and unhealthy. Like there's different approaches that make it better or worse. I think if you want to play with that at all in public, you have to be very mindful and careful with the spaces you're doing that in, and make sure it's at like an edge player only night. The mods or the DMs know what's happening, and you are communicating all that ahead of time to smooth out any wrinkles and to make sure it is really okay with that venue. But as far as like, is it ever okay to kink shame? I feel like implicit in the definition of kink shaming is this understanding that it's unwarranted. Like, I feel like, to me, like, I don't know if I could come up with a definition of exactly what kink shaming is on the spot, but to me, there's a flavor to the word of kink shaming that feels like it's making fun of somebody or ridiculing somebody for having a kink that you don't like for some reason. And it is not justified. I think that there's a separation between like critique or criticism more generally and kink shaming. Like if it's valid to have negative opinions about it or to be like, don't do this, this is wrong, then I feel like it's not kink shaming, right? Like if you're telling somebody to not piss in the fountain, that's not kink shaming. That's telling somebody to not do a wrong thing. Like, you know, I just feel like kink shaming gets really overused as a term. And so I am not like, I feel like it's confusing. I feel like now kink shaming means so many different things, and like the way that I mean it generally is like in the sense of, you know, it's not warranted and you are like, you know, ridiculing somebody for something, and that's not like justified or fair. But also at the same time, like I think there you can justify kink shaming, and if you can justify it, then it's not kink shaming. Then it stops being that thing. I don't know if that helps, but yeah. I feel like being the kink police and being a dungeon monitor are two different things. But yeah, different. I guess they are technically the closest thing that we have to kink police. But yeah, let me look at some other questions here. Yeah, I feel like so many people are fascinated by submission and they look it up and get Andrew Tate crap instead of kink. I mean, God, yeah, it's like, we didn't know how good we had it when 50 Shades of Grey was our only problem. That guy was fictional, you know? Christian Grey's not real. But Andrew Tate's there in the flesh, you know? Actually, it would be really funny if Christian Grey was real and, like, Andrew Tate were, like, they were in the same universe. That would be wild. There's a fan fiction about that, I'm sure. Andrew Tate, Christian Grey fan fiction. God, that is cursed. Can we go back to saying don't yuck my yum? I missed that phrase. Yes, we should bring that back. It's a good one. That is a good one, for sure. As a Gen X, our mainstream BDSM media was always portrayed as a sick joke. Yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of it was for, like, basically until the last, like, 20, 25 years. It's always been like, LOL, look at the weirdo freak show people doing their weirdo freak show people stuff, and that's not helpful. That's not good representation at all. The hair makes you look so much like Dito Montes. Thank you, I think. I didn't do anything different with it. This is just, like, how my hair is looking today. My forehead is shiny, though, because I did a chemical peel. So, shiny, shiny skin. We love exfoliation, people. I have a video coming out soon about my 1-year history of doing Nexplanon, and let me tell you, my skin has been on a journey for the last year. It has been a skin journey. Birth control does a number on your skin and your body, as it turns out. Who would have guessed? I like to see a film with a female boss with a male secretary. I mean, yeah, I think we should do a gender inverse remake of Secretary. I love it. Only, I guess we can't, can we call him a secretary? Is that sexist now? We have to call it like the assistant or like the executive manager or the executive assistant to the assistant manager. I don't know. I don't watch The Office. Yeah, I would love to see like a more just more representation of like positive male submission or like female dominance of any kind. Both of those would be great. Sometimes together, sometimes not. Either way, I'll take it. I will definitely take it. I am neurodivergent with sensory issues, but I really want to try out BDSM. What could recommend? So I'm pretty sure more than 50% of our chat is neurodivergent of some flavor, and so they probably have different opinions about this. But it's like I'm going to answer this based on you saying specifically that you have sensory issues, because there's lots of different flavors of neurodivergent in terms of how that like impacts you and what you feel comfortable with and what you're looking to get out of kink. I always recommend, if you want to go to places in person, if you can research them, try to find a website, a FetLife account, try to find photos of previous events, get to know what the space looks like do they play music? How loud is it? What kind of reputation do they have? Do they have lights? Do they have snacks? What are those snacks like? What is their furniture like? Do they have couches and cushions and beanbag chairs, or just like, you know, hard plastic chairs? Like that's not really a thing, but like it could happen maybe. So get to really know what a space is like before deciding to go. I personally recommend always going to a social event beforehand, either built into the event space itself, like going to a discussion group or a class or something, so that way you can get to know the space outside of it being a play space, so it's not as loud, not as noisy, it's not got all the lights going and everything. You get to kind of know a space as it is before stepping into it in like peak party mode, and I find that that is really helpful, just to get used to that environment. And definitely social events, I think, tend to be a little bit more easy to navigate. I also really like, and I've heard lots of good things about the Loop earbuds. I don't have the Loop earbuds, but I have something very similar, which is the little Google Pods, and they are a really discreet way of getting to kind of personally like you know, sort of block, like, I don't know what the decibel level is, but I think they go between like 5 and like maybe 23 decibels of dampening. So you get a little bit of a quieter experience for yourself, which can make socializing a little bit more difficult. But if that's like one of your main sensory issues, that can be a really good way to handle that. And there are just lots of neurodivergent kinky people. There are so many. They're just all over the place. We're everywhere, okay? They're everywhere. And I would look for like neurodivergent meetup groups or a Discord chat that's local to you, or just like connecting with people. And like even messaging organizers is always a good option too, and being like, hey, I'm new to the scene, I'm curious about coming, but I'm neurodivergent, or I have XYZ thing going on. What do you recommend that I do? And not only will you likely discover that at least one person organizing the event is neurodivergent themselves, but you can also quickly discover that there are many people in the community that they know that are neurodivergent that are willing to like go along with you to the event or introduce themselves, and that can be a good way of like meeting people who are like-minded, you know? Yeah, I go live every Friday at 6. We ask questions and we hang out. It's a good time. And I talk about TV shows and books and drink water and talk about how cute my dog is. So, hopefully it helps you. I don't know if anyone in the chat has some like specific things about being a neurodivergent person and like how you have found success navigating the community. But there are lots and lots of options out there for sure. And this has already passed for this year, but it is a general really good resource I always like to recommend, which there is an online conference that happens typically, I want to say in May. It's called Thrive. It's called ThriveCon. You can just Google it. It's called ThriveCon. ThriveCon BDSM or something. You should be able to find it either on Google or FetLife. And that is a mental health conference that usually has a lot of classes and discussion groups about being neurodivergent or having ADHD or autism or sensory issues or anything like that in the kink community, and navigating that, going to events, meeting people, doing scenes, having relationships long term, living with other people, doing anything like that. And then when it comes to, I guess maybe I'll just speak for a second in terms of like negotiating with people if you have sensory issues. I would say the main thing is that you should be very upfront about how that affects you and your life, and like what kinds of sensory things that you might be like activating for you, and like possibly having like a sensory issue specific safe word, and like having a separate safe word for actually like, you know, I don't like this scene needs to stop right now, and then having a different like word or phrase for like, that feels yucky, I need it to stop, and like we need to do something different, and it's specifically about a sensory thing going on. But I know a lot of people like get a lot of comfort if they have sensory issues from like a lot of very rhythmic scenes, right? Like flogging, spanking, more rhythmic impact play, and I think tends to be something, or like bondage especially, tends to be something that a lot of people with sensory issues very much enjoy. But I can't make blanket statements for everyone. Those are just sort of the generalities that I have noted. Does anyone have good recommendation for GPS tracker apps or collar tags? I have an Android, so AirTags aren't going to work. You can look into Tile. That's Tile can be a good one. I don't know how much that is like a GPS tracker. You can also do location sharing with Google Maps on Google devices, and that can be another way of like doing tracking stuff if that's what you want to do. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some things to work with. I do have a somewhat odd question. Is night-like, as in like a medieval night, not like nighttime, very active S-type rare? I was talking to a woman recently. I'm queer and I'm re-engaging with kink after a lot of trauma, and she was surprised by it. I might just have been really vulnerable. I would say it is unusual for somebody in that it's not weird, but it's uncommon, right? Like, I don't think that it's like off or like different in a negative way. But I think that it is unusual for people to have like night-like maybe be their main descriptor as an S-type. I would say there are lots of S-types that are very like active and proactive in terms of service, but night-like being the flavor behind that is maybe a little bit uncommon. But I think that it's like a beautiful and a cool thing to be doing. I don't think it's a negative at all, so I don't think you need to be self-conscious about it. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a very like, I haven't met anyone that's like somebody you know very well, or like I like have seen that in like a description of like somebody's style, like being somebody's night. I think I've heard of that concept before. Like I've definitely heard people talk about it, but I don't know anyone with that being like their main thing in a relationship. So no reason to be self-conscious. It is very much a thing. Not a common thing, but not out of the question either. And she was surprised by it? Yeah. Okay. I'll do you all one better. I took a wrong turn on Project Gutenberg and found Victorian erotica. That was dramatic. I mean, I found Victorian erotica at Powell's bookstore, so you never know where Victorian erotica is going to pop up. It's just all over the place. Okay, so sort of similar question from Emma. Any tips for individuals with disabilities or neurodivergences who want to enter the community? I took a hiatus and now I'm ready to get back out there, but I'm nervous about accessibility. So I didn't really talk about accessibility too much in my previous answer, so maybe I'll focus on that aspect of this, which I think is also very important. Accessibility is a big issue in kink spaces. I don't want to beat around the bush about it. It's because, as you can maybe tell from our previous discussion of Wicked Grounds closing, a lot of these places don't really have a lot of money. They typically don't have like a lot of either financial backing or people power. And so because of that, like accommodations that you might get from like a regular business that's more profitable or like operates every single day, you're not necessarily going to get from a kink space, because oftentimes these venues and locations are in more industrial older parts of town, or especially like ADA type accommodations where it's like accessibility for like wheelchair users or other mobility aid users. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. But I think there are some areas of accessibility that the kink community really shines at. Like, I think like sense and food sensitivity tend to be very well respected, like in terms of like, hey, like don't wear perfume, don't wear your Axe body spray, don't like bring in a giant bag of peanuts to the party. Like, there tends to be rules about that. There also tends to be like a lot of actually, I think the most common thing I see is like when I go to especially like conventions and larger events, I see a lot of service animals. So like service animals tend to be pretty well accommodated. There, I haven't like seen or heard of anyone having any issues with a service animal being allowed in a space or that causing any sort of like tension or friction. So, which is sort of tension, friction, little shibari joke for you, accidental shibari joke, I guess. Yeah, there's not too much issue with that. I would say the main accommodation issue that people run into that's like always a back and forth in spaces is like loudness and lighting. Because what is accessible for one person is not for somebody else. And so it's very hard for a venue to make a decision about like what way to do things, because like for some people, like lights that are too bright, that's going to cause an issue. For other people, they have to have bright lights or they're not going to be able to see what they're doing because they have impaired vision. Or, right, like really loud music might be a problem for one person, but the other person really needs loud music because it helps them with like stimulation. So like it's very difficult for like those sorts of issues to like find a happy middle ground where the majority of people are going to be happy and feel like their needs are being met. But yeah, I think just like always, like I've already said, like message the people that are hosting the event that you want to go to, talk to them about what their status is for accommodations that you might need, and like don't be afraid to ask very particular questions, because if they get uncomfortable or defensive, then that gives you a lot of information that you're gonna need. And like probably if somebody's really defensive about like how accessible their space is, they're probably not going to be like super great if you want to give them feedback about how like the light show was like potentially triggering for epilepsy. So yeah. With having ASD myself, I actually had my first kink experience through sensual bondage ASMR audio and actually experienced subspace during it. I mean, like ASMR and like self-hypnosis stuff is very powerful. So that's, yeah, it's bondage, again, very popular for a reason, and certainly that. Yeah, lighting is very personal to people. Yeah, for me, it's the fluorescent light that bothers me the most. Yeah, and it's like venues don't necessarily have control over what lighting is already built into a space, because it's so difficult to find a space where you're just like allowed to operate at all legally to begin with, and then to be able to have the money to like redo a fluorescent lighting system. Like that's so much money, and most venues do not have money to be able to do that. Yeah, so just communicate with the venue you want to go to. And I've noticed something, especially for like larger conventions, but also larger venues that host parties a lot. A lot of them will offer like a quiet area or a quiet space for decompressing. Or they will have like the beginning of the party or a certain time during the party for like quieter play where the lights are more up, like not like bright, but like, you know, more like, you know, like this kind of lighting. And they will have like softer music or no music at all. And I found those to be very like enjoyable spaces to be in. So look for venues and parties that are like afternoon events or like early weekend events, or like advertised being like a quieter, softer space. That might be more accommodating for you, but it really depends on like what it is you're looking for and how much that is like an inherent part of the space or something that is more changeable. But either way, you're going to want to know about it. So navigating it is definitely possible. Like I know people that are blind in the community. I know people with service animals. I know people in wheelchairs. I know people that are like paralyzed. I know people with all kinds of different things going on with their bodies, with everything else. And like there are problems. It's definitely not like everyone's so accommodating and everyone's so easy to work with and everyone just wants what's best for everyone. Like, yes, there are people who are assholes and ableist and judgmental, but I think that at least where I've lived, more spaces than not want to be accommodating and want to do better, but don't necessarily have the resources or know how to do that. And again, this isn't me, it's not my daily life, so I can't really speak to that like in too much detail besides that. But my observation has been, I think people genuinely do want to do well, they just don't always know how. Yeah, exactly. It's the attitude to accessibility that's key. Any venue organizer claiming complete accessibility clearly doesn't understand disability at all. Yeah, you can't just be like, oh, we're totally accessible. And it's like, well, like there's people that have contradictory needs. So how are you going to manage that one exactly? I really want to go to a munch or play party, but I don't want to go solo and don't know anyone to go with. Um, I mean, I think you can do that. I like go to a social, like, just go to a really low keys. Like, if you're ever like, oh, I want to try BDSM, but I'm worried about meeting people or fitting in or being by myself. And that's totally valid. Like, yeah, like I get that. Like, I wouldn't want to go to an event by myself. Like, that would feel really intimidating and scary. Like, I have to work up to want to do that. But I try to find events if I'm new to an area or I'm going to be going by myself. I try to find events that look interesting, that have some kind of activity as part of them, right? That could be a class or a discussion group or board games or karaoke or, I don't know, painting, naked yoga. I've seen all kinds of stuff. Have some kind of event attached to it or be at a venue where there are things going on, like a pinball arcade bar or something. Like there's all kinds, you'd be surprised. There's all kinds of different venues that people host munches and events at. Find something that looks interesting to you that has an activity you want to do anyways in it, and then go there and check it out. So that way you always have the event you can be doing, even if you don't want to necessarily be fully socializing. And then that activity really allows you an easy way to get into a conversation, to be able to get into like an easy way to talk to somebody else because you're doing an activity together that's shared. And I think that's a really easy way to get to that. So that would be what I would do. I found that to be helpful, but definitely going to a space can be tricky for sure. Chad Gentleman asked, Evie, have you watched The Predator Poachers? I don't think so. What is that? The Predator Poachers. Who is... I don't know. I'm seeing a news article. Fake Instagram account. Something about something leading to an arrest. I don't know what that is. So no, I haven't watched it. I don't know what that is. Um, that sounds like it has a flair of internet vigilante justice, which I have mixed opinions about. I think there can be good with that. I think there can also be a lot of negative bad stuff. So that's my take on that. Probably not a really satisfying answer, but there you go. All right, next question. Okay, because we're already at almost 7:30, so we got about half an hour left. So please get your questions in now if you want your questions to be answered, because I'm not going to be here all night because I got to go to the gym. So I will try my best to get to as many things as I can, but if you want to make sure I answer it, you can use a super chat or a Streamlabs donation. It'll pop up on screen as we just saw, and I will get to it right away. I used to think that BDSM was only for abled, neurotypical, white, Anglo, upper middle class, cool and attractive, gender conforming people, and everything was male dom and female sub because that is all I saw. Yes. That is one of the things that makes representation so important is like, yeah, like you think that, oh, I have to be this like skinny blonde woman in black lingerie to do BDSM, and that's not true, obviously. Like most BDSM spaces I know of and go to, even if not every event is this way, there are many events that are very like queer and diverse and colorful and different and have so many different types and sizes and shapes and different people at them with different personalities. Predator used your channel to teach victim BDSM? I don't know what that means. Well, if they've done that, I don't think I've been contacted by them about anything. So I don't know. I guess YouTubers just like use each other's content without contacting each other. Which seems weird because usually if I want to make a reference to a video, I like at the people on Twitter, I talk about it, that it's inspired by them or that uses their stuff and they know about it. But okay. Hopefully that's for positive stuff and not for bad things, but good to know. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of San Francisco stuff is just gone these days. It is a sad truth, but it is the current reality. They have been struggling for years with some controversies. They also hosted munches like Mistress Alice's Crossdressers Munch. Oh, I didn't like controversies. Okay, I'm not from San Francisco. I never like stayed there for super long, so I am unaware of any controversy that they may be a part of. I don't even know what that would be. But okay. I used to think that kink was for rich white couples or upper middle class couples. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the unfortunate side effects of like the fantasy of erotica, because like it's a fantasy. And of course, a lot of people have fantasies about not being poor and having a rich guy show up and be rich and have a yacht and have a mansion. And of course, because why, like, it's a fantasy. You can be and do anything you want to. But I think that also has left the impression that in order to do BDSM, you have to have expensive things. And it's an expensive hobby, basically. And it's like, it's not the same thing as having a polo pony. It's not like keeping a stable or having a yacht. Like, it can be expensive, but it can also not cost you anything at all. Like, you can do BDSM that is very fulfilling and interesting for years without spending more than like fucking $20 if you don't want to. You can do it very cheaply. You can do it very DIY, especially if you're creative or crafty or have any sort of skills like woodworking or anything, or even like 3D printing too. You can do lots with that to make kinky equipment, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, a lot of people just think they have to have money, and you totally do not. Now, if you're getting into like having a membership at a venue or getting tickets to go to events or to go to conferences or go to classes, a lot of them will have a sliding scale or I don't know what the phrase they use is, but sort of like a separate ticket price for community members in need, and that can be very beneficial, but those tickets do tend to be limited, and so it's not necessarily available for everyone who wants one, but they are a thing. So yeah, also something to keep in mind with that. All right, let's do a couple more. Oh, we have another super chat here from Twixie Shores. It says, the one benefit of being intruded, I'm assuming intruded, I think that probably means introduced to kink through Family Guy is what? Okay, how do you get introduced to BDSM or kink through Family Guy? How does what? I know that I've seen like memes and stuff that involves like a gimp suit and things, but is that episode or is that a different thing? Is that being upper middle class was not a requirement? Okay, fair enough. But you know what? Good for that. I will take that as a plus. The one plus, but it's there. We all learn about kink from somewhere, that is for sure. And sometimes it's erotica or personal fantasies, and other times it's Family Guy. Love it. Shibari Study is a great service, can recommend. Yeah, they're very good. Mm-hmm. My master and mistress have made my life so much more open to trying things, and my question is wax play, and why is it not talked about as much, or am I not looking in the right places? I mean, I don't want to say you're not looking in the right places because that implies you were doing something wrong, and I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I think it is very popular, like wax play, especially for like shibari and rope bondage, as we've been discussing during this live stream so far. That is something that is popular for people. They do it as like rope bondage scenes, and certainly the communities I've been a part of, there is like a wax guy where like they've got a crock pot and like a bunch of wax, and they do wax or body painting or something like it, very similar to it, on a regular basis, and it's like their thing. I would say where maybe you don't see it at parties, and if you're looking in like events or event photos or things like FetLife, a lot of venues do not allow wax play because of the mess from the wax, and it can clog drains and cause plumbing issues if you don't dispose of it properly. Obviously, having an open flame at a lot of venues is just like not going to be allowed at all because it's an open flame in an enclosed environment, and that's a fire risk, and you just can't do that. And yeah, so for the most part, the reason you don't see wax play a lot is because there are limitations around having open flames and disposing of the wax itself, and it's a messy form of play, and so it's not as common at venues, but definitely people do it and are into it. And it's like, I feel like it's also common in a lot of erotica too, as like a, not a trope necessarily, but as like a popular example of a kink thing to do. Like Love and Leashes has a wax play scene. Does 50 Shades have a wax play scene? Or is that just in the books? I feel like I'm thinking of something that has wax play in it, but I'm not remembering what it is. But I know that Love and Leashes does. So there are representations of it online. It's just like you don't see it as much in venues. Oh, good question. So this hasn't popped up yet on screen, but it should in a minute. It just takes a little bit to sync. Thoughts on virtual mommy dom / little girl relationship, all in Discord and FaceTiming for new little and a new mommy. Bad idea or a good idea? Okay, there we go. So it's very difficult to say just like outright if this is a good idea or a bad idea. Like always bad, or all good. I think that it can be done in a way that is good and a way that is bad. And I think anytime, and I don't have experience doing online BDSM relationships, so if anyone who does have that experience wants to contribute, I will shout out your answer here, because I just don't have that in my own like personal history or my repertoire. But my instinct is that let's talk about maybe how it can be a bad idea. So that can be a bad idea if, because you are both new, you don't have a really clear sense of boundaries or what you want to get out of the relationship. Let me wait. Microphone. Okay. I think my microphone's good. Okay. Sorry about that. What was I saying? Oh yes, how can that be a bad idea? I think that it can be. I've seen people doing wax at venues. I mean, where I live, it's generally not been allowed because of the open flame thing. But you'll definitely see people do it. But it is less common. It really depends on like local regulations and like the fire marshal and stuff, I feel like. But yeah, bad idea. I think it can be a bad idea if you don't have a clear sense of like boundaries and what you want to get out of the relationship. I feel like when I've seen this go wrong for people, it's because they are struggling with feeling like they want to contact somebody all the time, and like one partner is like always texting and always reaching out and always wanting to like FaceTime and get reassurance and like communicate constantly, and the other partner is not available for that. So like, number one, having like a communication mismatch in terms of like volume of communication, and then not communicating about what your communication needs are. I think two is not having a clear understanding of the motivations behind the kink, right? Like, is it a sex thing? Is it not? Is it a romantic thing? Is it about dating? Is it just platonic? Is it a caretaking thing? Like, what do you want to get out of it? What is your motivation for it? What draws you to this on both sides? And is that going to be on a baseline compatible for both of you each way? I think also not understanding how deeply this can emotionally affect you. I think a lot of people get a lot out of online relationships and also obviously in-person BDSM relationships. And a lot of people will say, I want to have a kink relationship, but I don't want to have feelings. It's just BDSM. It's not sex. It's not romance. It's just about the BDSM by itself. And while that works for a lot of people, absolutely, it is not necessarily always the best thing. It's not, it's very difficult to predict how your feelings will actually end up, especially if it's your first time doing BDSM with somebody else. Like, you might very well be able to stay in a place where it's just whatever you've agreed to up front in terms of like not catching feelings, just being friends, just doing BDSM, and not feeling any deeper besides that. But oftentimes, at least one partner in the dynamic will start to develop more feelings, in the same way that like when you're talking about like hookups and friends with benefits, oftentimes one party will end up developing more feelings than the other, and then that can lead to a lot of negative stuff, especially if your partner is like not really available and doesn't want that, and you feel like you're way over here and they're way over here. Just having that mismatch can be very uncomfortable. And then also just anytime you're online with somebody you don't really know in person, there's always the risk of like private information being shared, somebody not really being trustworthy, being catfished, all the usual like security safety risks that go along with being online and being vulnerable online with strangers. But yeah, the feeling, the freaking emotions, yes. Because BDSM is a very deeply bonding thing, and it doesn't have to be in person to have that feeling of being a level of deep bonding. So you have to be very careful with experiencing that and being real with yourself about your ability to handle like not being with this person in real life. And oftentimes, especially if like oftentimes littleness is this place of vulnerability for a lot of people, where it's a very raw, tender, deep part of who they are, and not having that like fully seen and fully respected from somebody else and all of that, like it's just not good. Like it's just not good. I don't know how else to say it besides that. Like you don't know what you're gonna end up feeling doing kink with somebody else, and I don't want anyone to like be hurt. But also on the other side, to speak like maybe positively about long distance relationships, like I do know people that they have long distance and it works really, really well. They're super compatible, they're very open and honest, and there's a deep level of trust very quickly, and they just like completely click, and it's like it works really well. So it's not all bad, but I think what makes it good is having that open compatibility and trust and communication, and not having that. Like you need that in any relationship, but I think long distance even more. So like getting to talk on the phone a lot, or getting to do video calls, like those I think are really important for being able to like maintain a long distance relationship that is involving kink to a certain extent, especially like rules, protocol, anything like that. If you're not communicating regularly, it's not going to really work. It also just helps you like weed out people that maybe aren't really being serious, or are like wasting your time, or are trolling you, or like have bad intentions. Like if they don't want to get on video or voice chat or whatever else, like that's probably a red flag. Like I feel like if you don't know someone well enough to be on camera with them, probably having a long distance power exchange relationship isn't like the right next relationship step. But that's my own 2 cents about it. I'm sure there are, like, if you just want to do like text role play stuff, like go ham. But having a full on like BDSM relationship with somebody long distance, that's like a pretty high barrier, I feel like. Yeah, as an aside, the whole amateur catching predators is super problematic. It's really just entrapment and does not catch any true offenders. Like, I'm sure there's stories of how it's helped something somewhere, but yeah, I feel like for the most part I end up hearing things where it's not a good idea, more so than it actually being a good idea. Great reply to my question. Thanks so much. Well, I am glad that I could help. Thank you for asking. All right, let's get into, actually, I really need some water right now. It was especially the case because I came of age in the early 2000s. I'm chuckling at the kinky roleplay of a middle-class hetero couple. I mean, I feel like that's the kinkiest play ever, is to like, you're like super kinky if you're like, you know what, we're not straight and we're not cis, but we're gonna play being a cis-het middle-class couple. Like, yes, do it. I love it. It's great stuff. So funny. Flip all of the scripts around. 50 feet is good for a suspension anchor, though. I don't know enough about like suspension like hardware and like what people are currently recommending to like say that for sure. But I feel like most people like I don't know. It could be true, but I don't know for sure. I don't want to make any statements about that. It was cold in here because the AC was on. It's actually warm again now. I put in a sweater because I was afraid I was going to be cold, but now I'm definitely, with all the equipment and the lighting going, I'm definitely pretty toasty in here. Any chest ties that are more popular with transmasc folks who haven't had top surgery yet, the classic pentagram tie is a surefire way to summon chest dysphoria. Yes. So definitely a lot of chest harnesses are designed in this very like straight way of like, we gotta make the titties pop out. Like they're designed to accent and to emphasize breast tissue. And I don't really like that either. So yeah, I totally hear you on that. I would say the other thing is, let me go. I know the Shibari study website. I'm gonna see if there's like a name for this. I don't know why like my Google is not cooperating today. I feel like it sounds like an old person, like a boomer. All right, I'm just gonna open up Firefox then. So Shibari study, I know they have chest harnesses that they do on more masculine chests, or like just like mask people, and I'm trying to see if I can give you a name to look up for later. A lot of them are like the ones that are more like mask focused do tend to be like TK, so they are like more complicated and more involved than maybe you want. There's one that's called the Misunugi harness. It's MISUNGUI. That's on the Shibari Study website. That looks like that might be a good option. There's also the Tengu harness. There's not a lot on here that's like a very like simple chest harness that I'm seeing that I can like recommend right off the bat. There is a basic chest harness that is not in the style of a pentagram harness. It is a little bit similar because they are all chest harnesses, but that might be a good one for you to check out too. But there's not like a figure 8 chest harness that might also be a good option. There is one in here that's called a gender expanding TK. That is a TK, so again, more advanced. It's going to be more complicated to do. But there are, like, I think you can take the principles from that chest harness and probably expand that, or there's also, the kite harness I feel like maybe wouldn't be a good option. But point is, there are lots of harness options. I wouldn't say there's like one that people go to that's like, this is the one I like that makes me feel good about this thing. But unfortunately, a lot of harnesses are designed to like make use of breast tissue, and like that's not gonna work for everyone. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the $9. Really appreciate that. Okay, I think we have time. We have like 15 minutes, so we definitely have time for a couple more questions here. How much rope do you need to tie someone to the train tracks? A lot, at least 100 feet, because you want to go from ankles to neck on that one. So that's going to be a lot of rope for sure. That's funny. Good question though. Good question. All right, let's see. Okay, I just got booted to the bottom of the chat. Let me go back to some more questions. My bratty sub didn't like me watching your last bratting vid because she felt like all your secrets were exploited. Well, I am sorry, but also not, because that means my video is accurate. So I guess I'm happy to hear that. Happy to hear it, but also sorry, but not sorry, I suppose. There is definitely a lack of diverse options, yeah. It's unfortunate. I think it's getting better, though. I do want to say, like, when it comes to accessibility and awareness and inclusion in all varieties, I think it is getting better on the whole, but it's a fucking painful journey on the way. Like, it's not been an easy process. We are dragging people kicking and screaming into a new way of looking at things, and it doesn't always go very well, but it is happening. Happy Pride. Can we, the queer community, take back the F word? It's long overdue. I would hope so. That's not really me to decide that. But yeah, happy last day of Pride. Oh my gosh, last day of Pride month. I did some Pride content this month if you're looking for some asexual representation in this month of June or going into July. And I had fun making it. And it was cute. It was wholesome. We love it. I loved it. It was fun. Yeah. Yeah, the SCOTUS ruling from earlier. Not fun. There's so much DS fanfic about Taskmaster and a fair bit about UK comedians in general. Feels a bit icky and parasocial to read about the real people, though. Yeah, I always feel like fan fiction with fictional characters is good, but when you're getting into like people in real life, I feel like that's always a little bit like, like, yeah. And I know that on Taskmaster, I do love that show. There is very much kink implications to a lot of the dynamic of the two hosts on the show, and then also sometimes the interactions between the participants and Greg Davies, who like is the Taskmaster. I think it is like good inspiration for like kinky stuff you can be doing, but I think it's good to keep in mind that I think they are like Alex Horn is like the main creative guy, I think, behind the show. Like he is very much really the one in charge behind it all. And I think a lot of it is like acting and pretend and not real. So I try to not be too like weird about it, because it's like, is it really them as people, or is it characters they're playing? And I think it's probably more characters they're playing. But yeah, anytime you're making fanfic of real people, like these days, the way that media works with red carpet questions and, you know, media interviews for like Vogue or whatever, like journalists have no qualms about like asking people about like, you know, here's, you know, William Dafoe reading a paragraph of fan fiction about him. Like, that's a thing now, right? Like, what happened with Pedro Pascal when everyone was like, he's daddy, he's the best, we love him, he's my daddy, I want him to step on me and choke me or whatever. Like, there were people directly asking him, being like, how do you feel about being the internet's daddy? Like, can you say you're daddy? Can you say something to the audience? Like, people got, like, I feel like it existing invites a level of questioning and further intrusion into people's lives I'm not comfortable with and I don't want to facilitate. But also it's like people have always been very invasive about social media personalities and actors, so maybe that's kind of part of the gig. But also, like, do we really need to make it worse? Is it really worth it? I don't know. It is a good show, though, but I think maybe the fan fiction is maybe not my favorite. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, I kind of really came to that realization when I think it was Motionless in White or one of those bands. I was listening to a behind-the-scenes documentary about them making one of their albums, and there's a portion in it where they, like, somebody shows them fan fiction about them, and they read it, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I know whoever wrote that is mortifyingly embarrassed, because of course you never assume a famous person is going to write about them, but everyone has a Twitter account now. Like, everyone's accessible now. Everyone's on Twitter, everyone's on Reddit, everyone's on YouTube, right? Like, Jack Black has a YouTube channel. You know, everyone is accessible and is so much more available than they used to be 50 years ago. And so, yeah, people are either going to find it themselves, or an interviewer or a friend or somebody else is going to find it and is going to bring it up. And then, you know, God, it's not even just having to worry about like your family finding it now. Now the people you're writing about could find it. Yeah. Do they talk about fan fiction on the show? If I may have missed that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. Because, like, why? Well, actually, no. I think I do remember them making a side comment about it now that you bring it up. I feel like they didn't really dwell on it too much, but, like, they were like, hey, you know there's fan fiction about us? I think I do remember that now that you say that. All right, let's do one or two more questions here. Okay, good question. How can someone get into kink or BDSM when they're single? I've skimmed through the 101 playlist, so IDK if there's a video there or not. Actually, I have a video. I filmed it once, but I want to refilm it because I decided that it was garbage and I want to redo it. But I have a video I am in the process of doing talking about the benefits of solo exploration, of like being a solo participant in the BDSM community, which is different than like doing BDSM when you're single, because I feel like there's getting into BDSM when you're single with the intention of finding a partner and like wanting to meet someone, and then there's like willingly being a solo person in BDSM and wanting to stay that way, or at least stay that way for a while, right? Like, I want to be exploring on my own for at least the first 4 months of being in the scene. And then I want to try to find a partner once I know more about what I'm looking for, which I think is a really, really healthy way of doing it. For, I am going to assume, based on your profile picture, because my advice for like what orientation you are, like my advice for how to do this is going to vary based on who you are as a person, right? Like your gender, who you're wanting to pair with eventually. Are you a top or a bottom, or a dom or a sub, anything like that? So I'm going to assume that you are a single person that is leaning submissive and is like female or femme presenting. In which case, your main problem being single is more likely to be that you're gonna have people that are gonna know you're new, that are gonna be aggressive and message you and corny you into conversations and try to bug out your time and try to be like, hey baby, I saw that you're new at this party and I just thought, well, I'm such an amazing dom and I thought I'd come over and blah blah blah. And like, you're gonna have people that are gonna be very invasive and try to get something out of you because you are new, and people have a fetish for new submissives. So you might have to deal with that, and in order to combat that, I would really recommend going to events where, again, there's an activity, you can be with a group of people, there's a social aspect. I feel like play parties tend to invite more of the aggressive, inappropriate, almost kind of like cruising attitude more than social events do. And I think in general, just going to a social event as a new person, regardless of top, bottom, sub, dom, whatever, always a good way to get to know the people in the scene before you go like play around with these people, right? Because you don't know what they're like. Like, they could have an event with an amazing description and sound totally up your alley, and then when you get there, everyone's like awful and catty and like it's unsafe, or like something else is like just feels really off to you, or the vibe's not right. So I think a social event is a really good way to get that vibe check first before committing to a full-on play party, and just like have a really good sense of your own boundaries ahead of time. Like, know what you are comfortable with and stick to that, right? Like, go to a party or go to an event knowing like, I am just here to meet people. I don't want to play. I don't want to make out. I don't want to like whatever. I am just here to meet people and maybe exchange FetLife info or whatever. And so do that. And if you can do that and that works out for you, that is a great option. And then you can know when you're getting into a situation, like, stick by your boundary. Don't be talked into something you're not ready for, because you can always come back later, right? You can always message between now and the next event. You can always plan to play another time. You can always do whatever. But having a good first experience, I think, is really important. And going in slowly is a good way to do that. Mm-hmm. So that would really be, I know it's kind of like simple advice, but like a lot of people get into BDSM when they're single. Like, I would say, like, I mean, I guess this would be like everyone in the world, but like most people get into BDSM. Either it's a couple that's been together for a long time that decides they want to be kinky together and they start exploring together as like a really tight-knit couple, or it's a single person that's like, I had this breakup, I had this long-term relationship, I decided I was kinky, I want to explore kink, I need to have that in my relationship, I want to go and like find that for myself. Like, most people don't tend to like waltz into it being like, I don't really know why I'm here. But yeah, I see that's like the two main flavors of people in the kink community. So you will definitely, like, I wouldn't say there tends to be like events for like single people, but there are definite ways to meet other single folk and like socialize and have a good experience. Yeah, munches, definitely. I try to say social events because it's more general than a munch. Like, it could be a munch, it could be a discussion group, or a book club, or a board game night, or a karaoke night. Like, it doesn't have to be a munch or be called a munch, but something of that flavor for sure. Hmm. I felt down on Kink for the past month or so. Anyone have any advice? I feel like I'm sort of known in the scene, but I don't want to be in everyone's face or come across as a tryhard. Um, I get that feeling. I understand what you're talking about. I think it's valid to be worried about, like, I don't want to be too much. I don't want to take up too much space or seem awkward. I mean, I think taking a break, if you decide you want to do that, is like a good option. I think, like, I don't know, like, I guess you have to trust people to be honest with you if you're being too much. But if you feel worried about, like, I'm taking up too much space, or I'm being, like, in everyone's face, or, like, coming across as a tryhard, like, you can consciously decide to, like, take a step back and, like, be more in the background and, like, asking questions more than you answer them, or, like, allowing other people to talk about themselves more, or, like, facilitating things for other people. I feel like in kink, like, I don't really know if I've ever had an interaction where it's like, oh, that person's being a tryhard, they need to, like, stop. Well, okay. There was, like, one time, there was, like, one guy that was, like, clearly very new, but was trying to act like he wasn't new. I think, like, that's like the one time that happens, is if you're like, I've been in the scene for a week, and here I am showing up to this party, and I got a whole, like, fucking, like, carabiner clip set with floggers and rope on it, and I walk around like some kind of, like, kinky umbrella stand full of kink gear, and I go, hey, you want to try this? And it's, like, awkward and weird. Like, that can come across as kind of tryhard, but unless you're literally doing that, I think it's fairly difficult to come across like you're just trying hard if you're being genuine and, like, you want to play and you want to meet people and you're trying to be friendly. I don't think that'll come across to most people as being tryhard, but I don't know, do you have, like, a negative interaction? Like, is it just, like, I'm worried I'm coming across the wrong way? Because, like, sometimes it really can just be in your own head, and, like, you're being your own worst critic sometimes. But, yeah, I think taking a break if you feel like you want to do that is fine. Like, you know, we all have ebbs and flows in our kink in terms of, like, how often we're going to events, or how much we're doing kink in our personal life, or anything like that. So it's totally normal, I think, to have that, you know, change over time. Mm-hmm. I feel like we don't acknowledge the difference between kink, which is harmless, and paraphilia, which is an archaic implication quantified in actual harm coming to another. Yeah, I think that's true, right? Like, yeah, like, you can't, like, there's kink shaming, and then there's, like, pointing out when somebody has, like, a paraphilic disorder and they're engaging in harm either to themselves or to other people. And if you're pointing that out, then it can't be kink shaming. Yeah. Mm-hmm. For the subfems looking for a long distance relationship idea, I've spent the past year letting my partner choose my nail colors, and it's a very nice reminder of my submission when I'm away from them. Oh, that's such a sweet idea. I love that. Perfect. Great idea. I have tried to do that in relationships before. Like, do you want to pick my nail color? And no one gives a shit. Everyone's like, I don't notice. What is it? I don't know. Black's fine, I guess. Oh, pink? Have you done pink before? Pink's a hard limit. No pink. But yeah, most people I have found do not have a strong opinion, and that makes me sad because I want someone to care and be like, ooh, you have nice nails, but so far no one's cared. No one has given a shit. But so yeah, everyone cares about different stuff. I feel like mostly the people I know have cared about, like, panties and, like, underwear and, like, sex things, but they don't care about, like, hair or nails or anything like that. They're just like, I don't know, you look different. That's it. That's all you get. Um, anyone have any experience with, like, virtual BDSM relationships or some website I could read about it? So I don't know about a website to check out. I think I already recommended the Loving BDSM podcast. There's an author that I don't super like who's called Michelle Fegatofi, and I think that her, from what I remember, her kink relationship started as a long distance relationship with, like, an older Italian man, and then eventually she, like, moved to Italy to live with him. So clearly, like, there are people with virtual BDSM relationships where that works out long term, but it's not, like, I wouldn't say there's, like, a guide for how to do it correctly, but it is a thing. It is definitely a thing. Thanks for the answer. I am pretty upfront about my experience level and don't try to present myself as something I'm not. Well, I think as long as you're being honest about who you are, I think that's going to be received positively, and, like, without, like, seeing you interact, like, in a personal one-on-one setting or in, like, a group setting, I can't really, like, point out and be like, hey, this is maybe what's, like, giving people a bad vibe, but just, like, you know, not overtaking a conversation, asking questions, giving people space, not cornering people, like, As long as you're not doing anything that's like a major red flag, you're probably okay. Yeah, but virtual BDSM relationships are hard because it's like, I feel like the main issue with virtual BDSM relationships is it's very difficult to know that the person you're talking to is like genuine or not. Okay, we have time for one more quick question here, and then we're gonna wrap up for tonight. Weird niche, but is there any media or ideas surrounding carnival or circus kink that isn't just straight up porn? I love clownery, but everything seems to be inherently sexual, and I don't want them mixed. Okay, Ko Meow, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name. Please go check out Sunny Megatron. I think a lot of their content talks about it in a sexual way because I think they started it because Sunny's partner has a clown fetish. But they definitely do non-sexual stuff, and they talk about like clown-related stuff and like clown makeup and clown scenes. So there are definitely resources for that. I'm so glad you asked that. If you don't know about Sunny Megatron or the American Sex Podcast, that is the podcast that she has been doing for a long time now. It's a very good resource, and also she has a blog too. So there's lots of resources out there for like talking about this. But yeah, talked about the clown kink a time or two before. There are lots of events for newbies and beginners. Yeah, definitely. Like, depends on where you live. Like, everything's very individual. I feel like some cities are like only newbies and like all the events are for newbies, and other cities are like, oh, we're old guard here and we got events for people that have been in the scene for 20 years. And like, you get, depending on where you live, you're going to get different stuff. But yeah. Okay. With that being said, the Bandita and I, Miss Bandita, are we sleeping? Are we sleeping? Hi, sweetie girl. Do we want to say goodbye to the people? Are we too sleepy? Oh, we're too sleepy. I think she's too sleepy to say goodnight. So this is her. She's going to say goodnight because she's very sleepy, very tired. So, good night for me and Bandit. Thank you all so much for being here on this Friday. We do stream every Friday at 6 o'clock Pacific time. If you've not subscribed and you want to see more of these, please do. That is how you can participate in the chat. And also be sure to turn on notifications as well, because notifications is mostly how you can find out if I'm live streaming or not. If you are like surprised I'm streaming, turning on the notification bell next to the subscribe button, that'll help you know when I'm streaming again in the future. Next week is my birthday. So my birthday is July 5th, which is a Wednesday. So I don't know if at this point I will stream that Friday and have that be my birthday stream, or if I'm going to be streaming on my actual birthday. So just be aware, could be doing some birthday things sometime next week. I usually keep people up to date over on Twitter. If you want to follow me in there, I'm just Evie Lupine over on Twitter. And thank you again so much for your support and for watching and for contributing your questions. And hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Have an amazing weekend. Have a wonderful night, and I